A lot of producers are always looking for ways to cut through the noise and make their tracks stand out from the rest. And sound design is one of the best ways to do that, especially when it comes to melodies. If you're making your own melodies, whether you're playing in instruments or using VSTs, you know that it doesn't always sound like a ready-to-use sample right out of the box. And so the goal is to take those raw, dry sounds and turn them into mix-ready, industry-quality samples that you can use in your track. But it can be tricky to know where to even start. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 easy starting points for your melodies. Now, these aren't the only 5 that exist, but these cover most everything you could want to do on a melody. And I'll break down every single step of the process. I'll make it easy to follow along so that you can apply this in your own tracks. The first starting point is lo-fi. And this is a broad term, but I basically mean anything that makes the track sound older or of a lower sound quality. Because sometimes if everything sounds too clean, it sounds amateur. And it just doesn't have that ear candy that professional tracks tend to have. In Blockchain Ultra, we have a ton of different lo-fi modules that we can mix and match and create some really unique lo-fi chains. Take a listen to this keys part. We're just using a stock whirly sound. So I'll pull up Blockchain Ultra and start loading some lo-fi modules. We can see we have a category called lo-fi, and in here we've got a ton of different modules that we can mix and match. There's a few key elements of lo-fi sounds, like for example, wow and flutter and noise. But I'm actually going to come over here to these chain starter presets, and I'll probably look at the lo-fi vinyl starter. So we can hear, we instantly get that lo-fi character. We've got everything from wow and flutter giving us that pitch wobble. We've got some tube warmth coming in. We also have some space being added with the room verb. Magnetic drift is simulating tape dropouts. We've got a bandpass filter and a vinyl noise designer giving us that classic vinyl crackle. But once we pulled up the preset, now we can get creative. For example, let's say we want to get a different type of vinyl sound. So these controls make it super easy to dial in different types of crackle, different tones of noise. We can adjust the overall amount of noise really easily. So this is just with the vinyl starter preset, but we also have a whole category of lo-fi presets here that we can pull up all different types of textures and tones. So this is a cool one because we're using this future noise designer. Instead of just our typical tape or vinyl noise, we're actually using a grain and static noise, which is just giving us a different texture. But from here, I can customize it super easily. Let's say I want to add a little bit more wow and flutter. Maybe I want to adjust the random jitter in this wow and flutter here. I can do that. Another one of my favorite lo-fi modules is this GB filter. And this is just kind of an 8-bit digital sounding filter, but it creates a really cool effect. Once we added that, I want to take the noise down a little bit. I really like what this sounds like, but if I wanted to blend in some of the dry signal, I can do that as well. And that creates an even thicker sound because we're blending in the dry signal with the pitch wobbled signal, and that's creating that kind of chorusing effect, which is really cool on this track. So there's obviously a ton of different lo-fi effects that you can achieve, even just with these lo-fi modules, but especially when you start putting in things like different reverbs, or you can even come over here to this analog classics and start using analog filters and analog modeled compressors. There's just so much you can experiment with when you want a lo-fi effect in Blockchain Ultra. The next starting point is similar to lo-fi in some ways, but I like to think of it differently because it often leads me to different results, and that is resampling. Resampling is more about making your melody sound like it was sampled off a record, even if you just played it in. Sampling is one of the most popular modern music production techniques, but there could be a lot of reasons why you don't want to actually sample, whether that's having to get samples cleared or you just don't want to have to worry about the legal side of things. So of course, there are tons of tricks that we can do to make a sound feel like it was sampled off a record, even though it wasn't. And we're going to use Blockchain Ultra to do that. Take a listen to this simple piano. So I've got Blockchain Ultra pulled up, and for this resampled vibe, we have a whole category of resampling presets. Let's just flip through some of these. So with these resampling presets, we're coloring the sound in a creative way, and we're getting a little bit more than just a stock piano sound. Like this one, for example, using this micro detune, it's giving us some really interesting stereo stuff. The digital resample sounds like we bounced it out to a very low res MP3 and brought it back in. And it creates a much cooler effect that way. Let's listen to some more. So these are great starting points. If we now want to take this chain even further with some more creative effects, maybe some type of reverse. I love how that sounds. Maybe we even want to pitch shift this a little bit. Now this pitch shifter is a model of some of the earliest digital pitch shifters. So we're getting all those classic artifacts that can sound really cool in a track like this. So one of the tricks with resampling is trying to make it sound like you sampled it off a record. And a great way to do that is to simply bounce your track in place after you've done some processing, and then chop up the audio as if you were picking this off of a record. So now that we've printed this to audio, we can do one of my favorite tricks, which is to put a cut at each bar. And then we can simply grab all these, shorten them up just a little bit, place a fade in and fade out to avoid any clicks. Now it sounds like we picked this off a record and had to stretch it around to fit. Of course, we can do other things like using this one repeated for the first and second time, and that's just going to further enhance that resampled sound. Even though it was the same notes as before, the way that the reverse was interacting, the way that the processing was interacting when we printed it in was just slightly different. And so this is just another layer of detail to make it sound resampled. Now, if you want to learn more about resampling, we've got an entire video showing you step by step how to produce resampled sounds. There's a ton of tips and tricks in that video. We'll link it down in the description below if you want to check it out. So those first two were more lo-fi sounds, but now we're going to go in a different direction. The third starting point I like to use is any type of space-related effect. This could be reverb or delay or a dimension effect, anything that takes a dry sound and places it in a different sonic space. So here's a simple piano part we played in. So it's a nice sounding part, but let's see if we can take it to the next level with some Spacey effects in Blockchain Ultra. So in Blockchain Ultra, we have some really powerful reverbs. These are all the same core technology that's behind Supernova, which is our flagship reverb plugin. And you'll hear that instantly when you load this up. Like, let's just listen to this vintage reverb. It's just a really nice vintage algorithmic reverb. And we've also got things like this ghost verb, which is a really creative type of reverb. It's using some unique phase shifted elements to create this kind of hollow effect. We obviously have things like a great sounding plate. We've got a very realistic sounding room reverb. We've got this nice shimmer reverb. Let's listen to what that one sounds like. So we can hear the shimmer on the tail of that reverb. It sounds really nice on this piano. Space Verb is a granular reverb effect, and this one produces some really cool results. That's one of my favorite Spacey effects. We've also got a ton of delays in here as well, like dual delay. This is a really cool and creative one for stereo delays. You could pull up the grain engine if you want a granular delay effect. So there's obviously a ton of really advanced and different sounding spatial algorithms in here. Of course, we could go to the presets as well, and there's some amazing starting points here. So this has got to be one of my favorites. It's that beautiful, thick reverb texture, but it's being smoothed out with this analog filter. You can hear how smooth it sounds on the top end. And from here, of course, we can add some other effects as well. I kind of like what the grain engine was doing. But instead of that, I want to actually blend this in parallel. So I'll just flip to the parallel mode here. So you can see how quickly we went from a stock dry piano sound to this full pad-like ambience just using a few modules in Blockchain Ultra. Have fun exploring all these reverbs and delays and granular effects. There's so many different textures and tones you can get with these. This next starting point is great when you're feeling stuck on a melody, because we're gonna really reshape the melody itself with our processing. So it gives you a chance to kind of reimagine what's there. I like to categorize this as chopped effects, and there's a ton of modules we can use in Blockchain Ultra for this. Take a listen to this clean guitar. So let's see what we can do with a chopped effect. Of course, we could do something like a half-speed effect. Now this one's especially cool when you combine it with other elements as well. You could blend the mix in here, and then experiment with things like different filter effects. So that can be a really fun direction to take things in. Of course, we could also go for something in a granular style. So this can produce some really cool effects. I especially like pairing this one with the tremolo. And if we do something like set this to square, so when we have them both set to eighth notes with the grain rate and the tremolo rate, we're gonna get that very rhythmic effect. But if we mismatch these a little bit, we can get some interesting rhythms. So one of my favorite parts of playing with this is you never know what rhythmic combination you're going to be able to come up with. For example, we were getting some really interesting things with the tremolo at a dotted eighth and the grain engine at just a regular eighth note. And one thing I might do here is print this down, and now I can take this and chop it even further as audio. So I've just chopped a couple different chords here, but we're already getting a completely different feel than where we started. So as you can see with this method, it's very easy to experiment with completely different sounds. We're really reshaping the melody. It no longer even feels like a guitar part. It feels like this completely different synthesized element. And a lot of that is because we're using the grain engine, tremolo, and other effects in Blockchain Ultra to create this completely different chopped effect. So we've looked at 4 starting points: lo-fi, resampled, space-related, and chopped. And the 5th direction I like to go in sometimes, if none of these are inspiring, is to try to combine them in unique ways, basically using a combination of these techniques to create something new. Like maybe doing a lo-fi Spacey effect or a Spacey chopped effect. And I found that this can sometimes lead to the most creative processing. Listen to this choir sample. So it's a beautiful sample, but let's see what we can do if we wanted to completely mangle it, turn it into something different. So let's say we wanted to try something kind of in a lo-fi and a spacey feel. I might start with some type of reverb. Maybe we'll pull up the space verb. This one's really cool because we hear all those grains kind of ringing out. But now let's say we want to take it in kind of a lo-fi direction. I might pull up the wow and flutter. We'll give it some tape saturation, maybe a little bit of tape noise as well. So now it almost sounds like a synth that we've created out of this raw choir sample. So that could be a really cool direction to take this in. It's completely different than where we started, but it could be a great jumping off point depending on what type of track you're producing. And we got there by thinking about 2 different directions. We wanted something kind of spacey, but then we also wanted something kind of lo-fi. We could do that with spacey and resampled, or chopped and lo-fi. We could combine all these in different ways and get even more creative with our processing. So those are the 5 starting points I like to use when I sit down with a melody. It gives you a good framework so you don't always feel like you have to start from complete scratch. Because a lot of times just getting into the flow is the hardest part. And Blockchain Ultra makes it super easy. It's got over 300 pro presets. All of these are incredible starting points. You can pick them up in different genres or categories and flip through them just to get a spark of an idea going. And then of course, it's super easy to dial in and customize and make it your own for whatever melody you're working on. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment down below, and subscribe for more tutorials like this. And as always, happy music making.